Yeah? All right, perfect. So I'm Andrew. Hope you're all having a pretty good day here at Unite. So I'm here to talk about kind of user acquisition within the Unity ecosystem and how you can use it to expand your game. If this thing will work. Oh, this. Much better. OK, so to start off, basically, I want to frame the user acquisition discussion for you. Oh, there's a screen here. So traditionally, user acquisition has been done in kind of a couple different ways. We have seen it basically where advertisers or game developers would actually just go to a network and set up a campaign and end up spending their money in some way, shape, or form. We call that scale. So with Unity, you can do that today by coming and working with Unity ads, setting up a campaign, targeting some audience, and spending some sort of cost per install. We find the cost per install thing very important because as a game developer, your main goal is to get people to play your game. And if you're paying for some people to just see your ads but not actually engage with them or play your game, it might be a waste of money. So that's why we run cost per install. And you'll hear me say this a couple times throughout the presentation. So scale, again, is a way for you to grow your game. It can be used for soft launching your game. It can be used for expanding a game that's already out, or just experimentation. We wanted to take it one step further and focus on two kind of main objectives for user acquisition managers or game developers that can be used to kind of take user acquisition to the next level. And what I mean by that is buying not only users, but buying users that are actually going to stick around your game, so retention, or spend money in your game and engage with your app's economy, which we call ROAS, or return on ad spend. So I'll kind of start a little bit by jumping into the audience pinpointer product and kind of what it does. So traditionally, again, in the past, when we think about that scale campaign and how user acquisition was done, we really saw user acquisition managers or game developers kind of placing the same bid across a large set of users, not necessarily doing efficient targeting. We saw the industry take it a little bit further in starting to segment audiences. So for example, if you knew that your game worked very well on iPhone 7 or iPhone 10, you can actually create a campaign that targets those users specifically and bids higher or lower for those users, depending on what your objective is. But again, we wanted to kind of build in some sort of automation, which is really kind of going down to what we call the cohort of one. The idea here is that every single individual player in the world has a different value, whether you define that value as someone who stays and plays your game or someone who spends money in your game. But we understand and we know that every player has a different value for every single game out there. And that's why our audience pinpointer product is kind of taking user acquisition to the next level. And let me jump a little bit into kind of what the opportunity is here. I like to call this product another tool in your user acquisition tool shed. So the real focus here is, you can still have great success with these scale campaigns, which are manually targeted, focusing user acquisition on a specific segment of audiences. But the pinpointer product, in addition to those scale campaigns, can be used to automate your buying and do it a little bit smarter. The machines are a little bit more efficient at finding those one users here and there around the world that are going to engage with your game and spend money in your game. So at the end of the day, when you're running scale campaigns to get a lot of users and audience pinpointer campaigns to actually run automated campaigns and actually find those high-value users, those two in combination will make you as a game developer or UA manager more efficient, and it'll allow you to spend your money smarter. So kind of high level here for the audience pinpointer and just in general how our machine learning model works. You hear the ML thing being tossed around all the time, and it's a huge buzzword, but we take it pretty seriously here at Unity. We understand that the scale across our network of 1.5 billion devices generates a lot of data, and we want to put that data to use. So as an advertiser, let's just say you come into our network. It all starts from a user generating an ad request. This is an individual person somewhere in the world that's saying, I want to boot up this game, and at some point within this game, I'm going to watch an ad. Excuse me. So at that point, we get a server-to-server ping from the individual app or from our SDK, and we get some context about that user. And we use that in our machine learning model to properly value this one player for all of the advertisers that we have on our network. Again, this is kind of going back to that important topic that every single user has a different value for every single advertiser, every single game. From there, Unity runs a unified auction, which maybe some of you have heard about in different sessions, but it's a fair auction where the highest bidder will win. And in this case, when we find a user that has a high predicted value for your game, meaning that they're going to spend a lot of money or actually stay in your game, we want to bid as aggressively as possible for that user to make sure that they go to your game. From there, it's just a kind of iterative process where the install is generated, we observe that user's behavior within your game, and we feed that back into our machine learning model so that next time we see a different user, generating an ad request, we'll know how to better value that user. So to kind of sum that up, I wanted to just basically point out the key point there. The goal here is to build a product, Audience Pinpointer, which takes away some of the painful parts of user acquisition and automates a lot of the buying so that you can spend smarter. Within this product, there's two main objectives. The first one being, again, retention. In our case, we define retention for this product, and this will probably be expanded in the future. But as of right now, it optimizes towards day 7 retention. So for all the users that you get, we basically try to optimize for the users that will come back on the 7th day or 7 days later. So let me dive a little bit deeper into this product. This is kind of a normal curve that we see in most games. Each of these little dots is an individual user. The x-axis scales to high retention on the right-hand side, low retention on the left-hand side. Most users tend to fall around the average. Some are a little bit lower, some a little bit higher. The key here, and why this product is successful, is the users on the right-hand side that are in blue. There are very few of them. They're kind of difficult to find. They're hiding out there in the world. And it really requires a solid machine learning model to find those users and actually give them to the right games. So I wanted to give you a real concrete example of how this product works. And bear with me for a second. So we basically receive your guys' data when you send it to us in order for this product to work. And we get the average day 7 retention. So in this specific example, it's around 15%. From there, you give us a CPI, or cost per install bid, that you want to bid to buy new users in our network. In this case, it's $5. So when you switch on the retention objective, it shoots and looks for these new users that are generating ad requests and predicts for every single one of those, what is the expected 7-day retention of this individual user. So in this case, we find a group of users here that, let's just say they have a 45% day 7 retention. Excuse me. From there, we basically just take the ratio, so 45% of the predicted user and 15% from your average, and we use that ratio to kind of quote-unquote flex your CPI. And from here, we come up with a $15 bid, which is 3 times your base bid. And again, the reason for this is to make you as competitive as possible for these high-value users within our auction. Again, easy to find users on the left-hand side here, rare, higher-value users with higher retention on the right-hand side. And we've been running this product for close to a year now. It came out of beta in the beginning of the year and has really started to scale up. So we actually started to get some really exciting results from the advertisers who have been using this product. And we honestly think that kind of numbers speak louder than words here. So I wanted to specifically show this example from one of our advertisers that was kind enough to share this with us. You'll see on the graph here, if you cut it smack in the middle, on the left-hand side, it was when they weren't running the retention objective. They were just running their normal user acquisition kind of scale campaigns, getting about 1,000 installs a day with an average D7 retention of about 12.5%. They clicked on the retention objective in the pinpointer campaign, and immediately they saw an increase of 150% in installs. And this is, again, because they were more competitive in our auction. But not only were they generating more installs, those users that they were acquiring were 60% more likely to stick around their game within the first 7 days. This is, again, super important for a game developer or user acquisition manager because, again, you want to spend your money smartly. You want to make sure that when you're acquiring a user, they're the user that's actually going to stick around your game, especially for, let's just say new games. This is a really good product where you're soft launching and you need a small set of users to test new game features, et cetera. You can use this product to make sure that the users you're getting will stick around so you can actually test on them. The next kind of objective that we have, and this is a newer product that just came out of beta, and we think that this is taking it even one step further, is our return on ad spend product, which is shortened for ROAS. The goal here, again, optimizing towards a day 7 number, is to tell us what percentage of your ad spend would you like to make back within 7 days. So if I spend $100 and you give me a day 7 ROAS target of 25%, we will shoot for $25 made back to you as an advertiser within the first 7 days. So to kind of go into, again, how this functionally works, I want to take us back to this machine learning example, but stick this little table in it. So imagine that these 3 campaigns here are 3 different advertisers. Each of these 3 advertisers have a different ROAS target, top one being 25%, middle one 15%, bottom one 10%. Now, when we see this user come from the ad request, again, we predict the value of this user, which again is the kind of bread and butter of this product. And it predicts how much money do we think we're going to make back from this person within the first 7 days if we give them to each of these campaigns. So let's take the high ROAS example, where their target is 25%. We see this user and we predict that if we give this user to this advertiser, they'll generate $3 within the first 7 days. From there, we establish the CPI, or cost per install bid, that we want to submit to the auction based on the ratio. So we'll take $3 of predicted value divided by the ROAS target to get to a bid of $12. In this case, it wasn't high enough to actually win the auction. The middle one was the one who did. And it goes through the exact same process as before. The auction is won by an advertiser. It generates an install. We observe the behavior of the user within the game over the next weeks, et cetera. And we feed that back into our machine learning model to actually improve the targeting and make sure that in the future, when we get a new ad request, we know how to better value these users. Again, actions speak louder than words. So we had an advertiser that was, again, willing to share some data with us from their initial tests. And they said, with audience pinpointer for return on ad spend, we can search for users who have a higher value in our game. Although we do see an increase in cost per install, it has allowed us to target efficiently based on our return on ad spend goals and hit our given targets with an increased LTV. Again, the whole point here is making sure that you're acquiring a high scale of users, but at a positive or strong quality or return on ad spend. So for this advertiser, they saw a 52% increase in their ROAS compared to their standard campaigns. Standard campaigns being defined as the manually targeted ones. They saw a 35% increase in day 7 retention versus the standard. So this was actually really exciting for us because not only did we see these users spending money, but they were engaging with the games a lot longer. Which overall led to a 2 times increase in player LTV, again, over the standard campaigns. So some of you may be thinking, kind of, how do I get started with maybe user acquisition in general or audience pinpointer as a product? We'll be here after for questions, and we'll also be in the round tables down the hall. I'm happy to talk with any of you about this. But if you haven't done user acquisition, feel free to go to the Unity website, and you'll see a whole section there on how to get started with user acquisition on Unity. If you are doing user acquisition today, in order to get started with the audience pinpointer product, you'll have to send us your session and/or purchase value data. Again, we need this data in order to properly value the users for your game. After that, we'll basically verify the integrity of the data, make sure it works with our machine learning models, make sure that we can actually use it. And we'll set the campaign live and work with you on optimizing that campaign, figuring out what's working, what's not working, how to scale it up, et cetera. So overall, my conversation was mostly around the targeting component. Basically, how do we better do user acquisition for our game developers in order to make sure that they're acquiring the right number of users, the right users from a quality perspective, and that they're happy with the money that they spend with Unity ads in growing their game. But what I think is really important is ad formats, because when you really think about what is the first thing that a user sees when they see an ad or interact with your game, when it comes to user acquisition, it's the ad that they actually see. So to talk about ad formats in more detail, I want to bring Maxine back up with Keith from Digitas.
So I'm going to talk to you about one of the most exciting things that I think is coming out of Unity recently, and it's Project Tiny. So Project Tiny is our next generation runtime. It is our smaller runtime. And if you've seen any of our keynotes recently in Berlin or GDC, you've heard about our entity component system, and you've probably heard about this smaller, faster runtime. And the reason I'm bringing this up now is because you're able to build files that run faster, have an instant load time, and are easy to create. And this is really important for playables. So playables are known as a very interactive ad format, and one that can retain users very well, because you get to try out the game before you actually download it. So to Andrew's points about retention, it's a very high likelihood that people will retain in the game because they've tried it. The challenge is that it's hard to make a playable. So there are usually two options. One is you can make it in an engine that doesn't have an editor, so it takes a lot of time and is costly to produce. Or you can give it to somebody who will create it for you, usually a network, and they'll probably charge you some percentage of it. It may take a while for them to create, and then you only can run it on that network. So with Project Tiny, you'll be able to use the assets that you already have in Unity with the editor that you or your developers are already familiar with, if you're more on the user acquisition side. And you'll be able to easily create playables with an editor with this very small runtime. If you were at the Pixonic session, Vladimir mentioned that one of his challenges was that playables were too big. And so this addresses exactly that issue. So right now, Project Tiny is serving 2D, and it's going to be in public beta in November. And we'll be moving into 3D in the coming year, and probably more into betas around March for 3D and eventually AR. But I want to show you the results so far from 2D. And 2D addresses two very important use cases, playables and instant games. This is an example of a playable ad that we partnered with Space Ape to build, and it's their game for Fastlane. So what I'm going to show you are stats that come from a third-party developer, not somebody internally at Unity building this. So the file size made with another engine was 2.6 megabytes. When it was made with Project Tiny in Unity, it was a little over 800 kilobytes. And you can see that the runtime is only 72 kilobytes within there. And most of this is the assets that you choose to put in. And as a result, it was a lot faster. So the cold load time was 2.7 seconds versus 1.3 seconds. And if you think about an ad, you don't want to wait around for an ad to load. So over a second makes a huge, huge difference. So with that, I want to introduce Keith. Keith's going to talk about what you can do in Unity today, and Project Tiny will let you do AR in the near future. You can already do AR today, and another plug for our SDK, where we will now have a network with able to run AR ads. And I'm going to bring up Keith to talk about how a lot of marketers are using AR.
Thanks, Maxine. Hi, I'm Keith Soljacich. I'm a VP Group Director of Experiential Technology at Digitas. And at Digitas, we're in the business of connecting people through truth, connection, and wonder. We're a diverse group of experts in creative and data and technology and media. And we put all that together into a specific kind of alchemy to create really great experiences for our clients. And we love the Unity Ads SDK, and we're really excited to get into it and start creating some great experiences. So specifically, XR. As a group director for Experiential Technology, that essentially means I know XR, and I've worked a lot in XR, and XR encompassing AR and VR and any other R we end up creating. It's extended reality. So putting you inside of that ad experience and letting you try it out, get creative within there and create some really great ads. So in traditional advertising, this is an ad unit. And it's a square foot of real estate that we can place branded messages on in your space. And it really comes down to a few things that enable these ad experiences. So first of all, we've got targeting. And targeting really means casting. Because what we want to do in advertising is get the right place where you're sitting down and watching that television spot, and then put the right people, products, and things in that television spot that you identify with. So you can transport yourself into that experience. And then reach. Right? So how many people can we reach with that ad unit, right? And you're looking at Times Square here, and we know millions and millions of people are going through Times Square every day. And if Diet Coke places their ad in this area, they know they're going to be able to reach millions and millions of people and hopefully sell more Diet Coke. And lastly is the message. What message are we trying to convey with that ad unit, that ad experience? And the ad formats are transforming in many different ways. And in this case, Sprite was able to put this really cool installation on the beach because they know that people that drink Sprite hang out in bikinis and swimsuits near the beach, right? And they want to convey that message of refreshment right there and directly. Now, there's a couple things about these experiences is you might be able to nail targeting and reach, but can you really nail experience? Now, mobile came along, and we got really excited because we thought, wow, we could do targeting, we can do reach, and some really great app experiences that would let us turn that front of that screen into anything we wanted it to be. But what did we do? We went back and did the same things that we did in traditional media, where we plastered the screen with ad units that pop up, that cover up, that obstruct you from content, and really get in the way of that great ad experience. So we're coming along, and we know this world is still in its infancy, but what if skipping my slide. But what if we could turn that mobile ad experience into something really great? What if you could see that car in your driveway that you're shopping for and customize it right there? What if you could play that game that you saw an ad for and try it out before you're able to buy it? It really changes the whole perception where we're able to combine a message with an experience, and that becomes all the more real and all the more powerful for the people that are looking at them. So right now, if you're a marketer and you're trying to get into XR, there's a few ways you can enable that. First of all, you can go out and you can build a bespoke app, a custom app, something like the IKEA Place app, and give customers a really great experience of putting that couch in the room in front of them or putting that car on the driveway. This is really a great experience, but the targeting and the reach, you've got to go invest money into media dollars to drive people to download that app and then use it. And that's a real challenge for marketers. Next, you can take on social media, so social media platforms like Facebook, Snapchat, et cetera, and you can really nail that targeting and reach, but then you are absolutely confined to the experience that those platforms will allow you to do. So you can go create a taco face and then drive people to that taco face, but that experience you just created is locked into that platform. You're not able to then easily port that to any other platform. And then lastly, something like experiential. That gives you ultimate creativity on what you can do, put people in an experience, give them that brand experience that they're looking for, but you're limited in that targeting and reach because you're only going to be able to run a couple hundred people through an experience like this. So really, up to now, there's been no perfect platform for us to go do all of those things on. But we think that's changing. And that's why we're really excited at Digitas about the new ads SDK with Unity. So when you can integrate AR onto those over 1 billion devices that are activating Unity games every day, this takes it to a whole nother level. So when we go back to that experience we were talking about with targeting, with casting, with reach, no longer do I have to put somebody in that that TV spot or that ad unit that you identify with. I can put you inside of that ad unit. So this example you're seeing here is where you could walk around a department store, try on clothes. You know, imagine if, again, you're able to customize that car in your driveway, launched right out of an ad unit. Or you're able to visualize that refrigerator in your new kitchen right in front of you that you've been shopping for. And with Audience Pinpointer, we can take on all of that really great analytical data, that machine learning to place these ads in the right place, then give you a great experience right there. And the opportunity is just getting started. So we know that global AR ad revenue in 2017 was just around $166 million. That's a drop in the bucket for the global ad revenue. But that's because the opportunities and the platforms were very limited. There was only a couple things you could run on, and you were really boxed into what they would allow you to do on that platform. So the spending is still a little reserved. But as we move forward in the next few years, that advertising spend is expected to grow to almost $2.6 billion by the year 2022. What does that mean for you as app developers, game developers? That means that you can be confident in your monetization strategies, knowing there's some really great ad experiences coming your way. They're going to have people hanging around and excited from break to break on what they're going to experience and see. So how do we get to these really great ad experiences we all know are coming down the line? Well, there's a couple things we can do to keep in mind what makes for a really great user experience. First of all, it's being user-centric. So when you do have these AR ads, go beyond just putting a 3D element in the space in front of you. We've all seen that, we've done it. There's some really great examples of that. But we can go farther to engage the user and bring them into the experience. Let them interact with what's happening in front of them and around them. And even more so, bring utility into that ad experience as well. So again, going back to the example of where you can customize a car in front of you, then being able to order that car. Or if you're going to put a refrigerator in that kitchen that you want to visualize, letting you measure out the space so you pick the right refrigerator, the right size for what you're looking for. And then lastly, expand out the scale. So again, we're looking at right now AR experiences that happen on a Target or on a tabletop or in that space really close to you. Let's move beyond what's in front of your face and expand that scale out to the entire room, right? Use persistence or room scanning to really detect what's around you and create that experience around it. And then eventually break out of that room and into the real world and utilizing the AR cloud that's being built up to create these great on-demand, real-time experiences. So let's expand that scale out. And we're really excited as an agency, Digitas, the connected marketing agency, and Unity, the preeminent platform for immersive content, to go out and create these really great ad experiences together. And we think that if we can create great ad experiences that live in your games, we'll have people that want to download them, install them, play them, and spend a whole lot of time in them. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. So want to show you something that addresses exactly what Keith just talked about, which is putting together this interactive format and then also augmented reality to bring together a comprehensive and very exciting ad unit. So our team in Helsinki built this in conjunction with Rovio, and it is an AR Rovio playable ad unit for Angry Birds 2. So as you can see, we ask for camera permission at the beginning. As soon as you find a surface, by the way, this is the Unity rooftop in San Francisco. So this is what our offices look like. And as you can see, this is a playable. So people get to engage with this. They get to pull the bird back. Kyle from our design team actually did this. He's pretty good, as you can see. What's interesting here is this is 360. So you can walk all the way around it, you can look on top of it, and it stays where it is. So if I were to walk away for a second and keep my phone going, I'd turn back and it would still be there. It locks its location really strongly. So that's the AR ad units that we have on the user acquisition side. And as I mentioned with this SDK, it can now run throughout the network if you install our latest monetization SDK, which is my plug. And we have all sorts. AR is one of the formats. We also have Banner, and you might think Banner is gone. It's actually one of the most requested ad formats and the most used ad formats. And a lot of agencies are spending a lot of their time and getting a lot of money for creating Banner. But don't worry, it doesn't play unless you put that into your game itself and decide to have that placement, where AR can run anywhere that you have a video or rewarded video. Also within this SDK, if you weren't in some of our earlier sessions, are personalized placements and IAP promo. So a lot of new features in this SDK. I've been a pro at this all day. Okay. So we'll bring up Andrew and Keith up for any quick questions, and then we'll close out the day very briefly.
So bright. No questions. Make it. Oh, over there.
Yeah, I'm curious about the with the collection of data, like how does that play into today's world with like GDPR and like all these new things coming out with the collection of data? And like, are we responsible for anything about that as developers, or is that all part of the SDK?
Yeah, so we obviously take data privacy very, very seriously. So that one specific slide that said, in order to use audience pinpointer, you have to send us your session and purchase data. That goes through our regular data pipeline that has very strict GDPR rules. As far as the SDK and basically all the data that generates, it also goes through the exact same pipeline as the rest of our data. We have a huge footprint in Europe, and so we take GDPR very, very seriously. So I can probably let some of the more legal-focused people that are here answer like any very, very specific questions about GDPR, but we can assure you that we take it very, very seriously for sure.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
You showed that one chart that was the publisher that was targeting the retention, how much it changed from like low level, and then it just went right up.
Maybe
I was curious, like, how much did their costs change?
What was that?
Yeah, like, so how much did their costs change? So did the amount of money they were spending on their acquisition also go up?
Yeah. So basically, if you can assume their installs went from 1,000 to 2,500 installs a day. So by default, their cost and spend overall would go up by about 150%. It usually scales with the CPI. But since the cost per install is slightly higher, it tends to be about, I don't know, like 15 or 20% above that base bid. So you can assume that it scaled with the total install size, but also got a little bit costlier, but their return was much higher. So we do acknowledge the fact that the cost goes up a little bit, but overall, your return is much stronger.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome talk, guys. My name is Lex. I'm a developer with white label AR.
Awesome.
And I really think this is the future, especially with agencies and brands, and really giving the possibility for us as developers to create a whole new component of content, right? And brands to share in the benefits. Where do you see, especially from an agency kind of perspective, where do you see an agency positioned in the future to benefit most from this? Like I saw the Angry Birds is essentially a Unity kind of component, and you mentioned banner ads, traditional advertising. What do you see? What is the direction of brands when they're looking into AR? Are they looking to get like an ad and then maybe a Snapchat filter or something like that? Like where do you see the trends going?
Sure. I think, any ad experience, we want it to be something that you're inclined to engage with. So to me, and right out of the gate here, it would be these kind of small snackable experiences that give you a really cool branded experience that you get really quickly, and then hopefully we can entice you to learn more, visit the website, maybe download a larger AR experience. I think that gap over time will probably close in with what we're able to do in an actual runtime on an AR ad, where that'll just grow. We'll be able to do more and more, load more and more content in there. Certainly once we have 5G, faster download speeds, faster connection speeds, those experiences can get richer and richer.
Beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's
Cool.
definitely driving it forward.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, one more.
I think so.
Oh. We'll start on this side first, on the right-hand side.
It's me again. I think I've asked a question pretty much every session. One fan. The amount of stuff that Unity is trying to do as a platform is pretty astounding, and sometimes maybe I get a little like, how can they do all this stuff? And particularly with the audience pinpointer, I couldn't help but think that this is what Google does, and I'm guessing they do it better than you do. And so I'm wondering, like, and even, you say you have a lot of installs. Well, Google has all of Android installed. So I'm just wondering, how are you going to differentiate yourself from Google or another competitor?
Yeah, that's a super valid question. So the first point about, does Google do this? Yeah, of course. Facebook also does this. It's something, again, and I very specifically wanted to say that it was a tool in your toolbox that you use for Unity. I think the main difference is that having coverage of so many games across both iOS and Google Play allows us to have good visibility into really like all games across both platforms. The second major component that I think is more exciting on our side is that we have the engine. We're there when you're generating the game. We understand kind of how you're building your games, how are your players interacting with your games at the runtime. And we think that is going to be the true differentiator between how Google views users in games that are on Google Play and how Unity views users. So yeah, to be completely honest, it is relatively the same concept, but from a usage perspective and kind of the power of the engine that we have, which they do not, I think that's kind of where the differentiating factor is. Cool.
So for our particular game, we have D28 as a very important metric. Is it possible for us to use D28 for ROAS instead of D7?
So as of right now, D7 is the main focus, but over the next couple quarters, we're definitely going to expand beyond that. D1, D3 is really important for hyper-casual games. D28 or longer is really important for kind of the more mid-core, hardcore games. We started with D7 because we thought it was a good middle ground for basically everyone. And we do realize that there is a lot more opportunity if we kind of shrink that D or increase it. So yeah, definitely going to expand those, but I think we're going to start probably with the lower day first, because there's a lot more casual games out there as we learn and expand the product, and then we'll be moving forward with more of the higher day targets. They get a little bit more difficult to predict because they're so far out.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Cool. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, everyone.